2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Devops.com workshop, brought to you by Techstrong and AWS. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting workshop ahead. First, I do need to cover just a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our workshop, or maybe you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live recording today. If you have any questions, and we really hope you do as this is an interactive workshop, we want you to send those questions into us using the chat or the Q&A. Jonathan, our speaker today, will be going through both, and we've got a couple of extra support people with us to help with those. So do send in your questions, send in your chats. We want this to be engaging. Now, my final note will be if you click the handouts tab, you'll see a couple of resources there. We've included a workshop packet, which is going to have some essential information with following along with today's workshop, as well as just other links and blog posts, other resources that AWS wanted you to have. And before we close, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of today's program. So on to the title of our program, Transform IT Operations with ML-Powered Solutions for AWS. And I'm joined today by Jonathan Vogel, Developer Advocate at Amazon Web Services. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to kick it over to you now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for making time for today's workshop. I am very excited to be here today. My name is Jonathan Vogel, and I'm a Developer Advocate at AWS. I'm going to be running you through some slides just to get everyone aligned. And then today, you're going to have the opportunity to get hands-on with AWS. We'll be vending out temporary AWS accounts, and you'll have a fun sandbox environment to walk through some scenarios and get the opportunity to get hands-on with AIOps on AWS. I'd love, and I see folks already, calling out in the chat. So I already love the interactivity. Chicago, Guatemala, Canada, we got people from all over. I'd love for you, if you're comfortable, to share perhaps your role, whether you're a student studying computer science, or you're a DevOps engineer, or you're an executive like a vice president of site reliability engineering. We have something in this for everybody. So I'd love for you to say your role if you're comfortable and where you're based or where you're calling in from. Very nice. I see more in here. Houston, Italy, India. Wow, it's so exciting to have such a diverse group of folks today. And before I get into our topic and introduce a little bit more about myself, I want to just kind of align on what we're going to be getting into. We're going to take our time today. So I'm going to be explaining concepts. And for some, you might already know this stuff. And if that's you, I appreciate your patience, because it's important that everybody gets to learn today. And rest assured, I love having follow-up conversations after events like these. So if after today's workshop, or rather during today's workshop, I'll strike a balance between folks that might be new to AWS and perhaps folks that may have been using AWS for many years. But rest assured, let's continue the conversation. So if you're one of those experts and you feel we didn't get deep enough today, I'm going to have my contact info available, and you're welcome to reach out. We can set up a follow-up conversation, and we can get as deep and broad as you would like. And perhaps you're someone that's new to AWS, and even though I attempted to try to provide some foundation, maybe it wasn't fully enough for you. So again, for those people as well, I'm happy to set up. We're happy to set up a follow-up where we can make time to get you up to speed. And that's my job as a developer advocate. And I love helping customers be successful on the cloud. I'm pretty sure everyone can hear me. I see someone saying no voice question mark. Perhaps there might be an issue with your speaker configuration. So maybe Cody can provide you some guidance there. But yeah, let's jump right in. So again, I said my name is Jonathan, developer advocate. I have been in this space for the space of IT and software development for 15 years. I studied computer science. I was a software engineer. Later on in my career, becoming a DevOps specialist, solution architect here at AWS. And as of this year, I've moved to this developer advocacy role and really just growing and learning so much every day. So that's a little bit about me. You are here because you've adopted cloud and you're moving fast and you have that responsibility to keep reliability up. And I'm here to talk to you today about a fully managed AIOps solution on AWS. We built this for you. I'm talking to my engineers, operators, DevOps people, SRE or site reliability engineers. If you haven't, if you're new to AWS and you haven't adopted cloud, you're certainly more than welcome to be curious today and learn. But the people that are going to get the most out of this are folks that are already using AWS and you have some of these objectives I'm mentioning today. And so we'll give you a quick overview of this agenda. So why AIOps? And it starts with what kind of challenges are you facing in IT operations and software development? These same challenges are what led Amazon to building this fully managed AIOps solution, Amazon Devops Guru. And that's based on our experience and our customer feedback. And that combination creates a flywheel effect where not only did we initially build, but we're continuing to grow the capabilities of this fully managed solution. We'll carry forward the discussion and I'll show a serverless use case in particular, because that's what the hands-on portion of today's session is about. So I'll actually show you an example of that and the same one that you'll get your hands on. And call out that more customers and more people like you are seeking to reduce undifferentiated heavy lifting by moving to serverless architectures. And for some folks, this is a radical shift, transformational, and they're finding how critical it can be to have an AIOps solution as a foundation to those architectures. And so I'll get into a demo or two. I'll also, I think what everyone hopefully is most excited about today, which is getting hands-on. So then we'll get to the hands-on part. I have a packet set up. So it has all the things you need to get that account. And then all together, I'll be walking you through that workshop. And I'd like to make this interactive. So I see a lot of hellos and where people are from and what kind of roles, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see that. But as well, please, if you have any questions at all, I do have the chat up here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as we go along. I am also joined by a couple of my colleagues. You may see them in the chat. Akanksha, representing the user experience team for Devops Guru, and Nick, who's representing the engineering team for Devops Guru. So if you see them answer any questions, they're my team, and I'm sure they're happy to help as well. Cool. As I promised, we'll begin with some challenges, and starting with industry demands. This pressure to innovate faster. It's ever more increasing to stay relevant in today, right? It's maintaining business agility. And how do we do that? Well, it's leading to a shift in solutions. Like, how do we optimize application availability? Our customers expect our applications to be available and working as expected all the time. And to achieve that, you have all these monitoring things and dashboards, and that can get pretty overwhelming, in particular with all the data that's coming in. So I have experienced this, and I'm curious if other folks have. So in the chat, you can just say yes if you have experienced this. But there's a concept referred to as alarm fatigue. So you have a solution like a important to your business application, and you've configured all these alarms, and it's just getting to be too much. Has anyone out there experience alarm fatigue? Nice. I see some yeses out there. So, and again, I'll go back to my background for a moment. Prior to my experience at AWS as both a developer advocate and a DevOps specialist SA, prior to that, I led smart factory solutions across the US. And I was the architect responsible for a relational database that was in a production system for my client. And I made a big mistake. I forgot an important index on a mission critical table. Now, what happens when you miss an index and the system starts scaling out? In my case, and what you may have experienced before, is performance degradation. My customer calls, and this is 3 months into this thing being live, and I knew right away, after looking into some things, that I made a big mistake. I configured the index, everything was good, we got it all fixed. But, in hindsight, going back on that time, I didn't have fancy dashboards and complex alarm configuration. I often just looked at the logs when something was astray. I would have loved to have a solution in place that could have told me this before my customer found out. And in fact, Devops Guru supports that exact use case. I'd be happy to demonstrate that later on in today's session. But I'm curious if anyone else as well. I know I asked about the alarm fatigue, but I'm curious if anyone else has had something like this happen, where you haven't something important in your business or an application important to you, and something goes astray, something breaks, the application's down, it's acting intermittently bizarre. Anyone wish they would have had some kind of solution in place to be able to either proactively let you know, hey, where you're trending, it looks like you might need to address something, or reactively let you know something's going on and here's the exact things you should look at to fix it. So I'd love an additional, I see some feedback in the chat. So anyone that, wish they would love that is exactly what's driving this demand for AI ops. And when we look at a traditional IT workflow, we see applications, and we're seeing more of a shift towards microservices-based architectures, which compounds this further, right? You have an app, and now you're breaking it up into microservices. So you have a lot more apps. And all of those apps are producing metrics, logs, perhaps in the case of microservices, trace data, and that's generating a lot of data. And you've got some setup going on. You have manuals, things that you've configured like alarms. Perhaps you had a customer experience where there was some high latency and the customer wasn't happy. So you've configured some tool or mechanism to identify when latency starts to increase. And maybe you have a nice dashboard that has all these different metrics, logs, and different alarms. Perhaps you're using CloudWatch for that. And then when something goes, when something is noticed, let's say that latency threshold is breached, you are notified potentially via some notification system. Let's say automated ticket creation. So think about this. How do you know? Is it like a temporary hiccup, or is the alarm really valid? I'm going back to that alarm fatigue. And what about the things that you're not looking for, like the alarms that you haven't configured yet? In addition to your DevOps culture maturing and accelerating, this can lead to gaps in coverage. Maybe when something goes wrong, you're looking at the logs to see what's going on. But imagine you could use artificial intelligence to add some additional intelligence to parse through all these metrics and get rid of some of the noise and only surface the appropriate signals, using AI to detect behaviors that deviate from normal operating patterns so that you can identify operational issues more intelligently, also known as AI ops for monitoring. Awesome. I love all the interaction in the chat. This is fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of yeses to my polls, so that's that's good or bad depending on how you look at it. And then we have some questions. Let's see here. What was your ops testing requirements that would be missed? So as an example, the latency, right? If your service or what you build for customers needs to be time sensitive and your customers don't want to wait, you might want to measure things like latency, and that could be an operational metric. Someone also asks about anomaly detection. How about anomaly detection? Anomaly based on metrics, trend, historical. Yeah, so absolutely. We'll be getting into this because as DevOps Guru is certainly looking for anomalous operational metrics, and it can identify those and bring them to your attention. Wow, great questions, folks. Keep them coming. We got another question as well from that says, can you be predictive and not reactive? So what's great today in the workshop, you'll actually have the opportunity to see both a proactive scenario of DevOps Guru letting you know proactively, but also reactive scenario where everything's broken and DevOps Guru is able to identify, this is the thing you should look at. So you'll get a chance to get actually hands-on with that today. But rest assured, we'll be talking more about it as I go through the rest of the slides to get everybody on the same page. So let's take a look at what you have today with AWS. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, you have different resources from AWS. And let's say, pick one of those out. Let's say a Lambda function. Lambda function is a serverless compute component from AWS. You want to run some code in the cloud, you could put in a Lambda function and then make an API call to invoke it and pay as you go. Now, you're going to, let's say you spin up that Lambda function. When you spin up that Lambda function or implement that Lambda function, you are going to get what are called CloudWatch vended metrics. And CloudWatch, what does that mean? CloudWatch is a AWS tool to see what's going on with your AWS resources. And in particular, these vended metrics are out of the box. So when you turn on that Lambda function, like without you doing anything, you are going to get these default metrics. So what does that include? That can include things like invocations, for instance, the number of times the Lambda function is invoked, latency, like again, that you don't want that to be too high potentially for some of your software implementations, and error. So if there's something broken with the Lambda, you might want to know. You can also certainly configure custom CloudWatch metrics as well. But you have, in addition to these CloudWatch metrics, We now, as of July, we launched log analysis. So now we can ingest Lambda logs as well to use AI to identify anomalous behavior. You'll have CloudTrail because you want to have that history and the how your resources are evolving and changing, have that record. X-ray for the traces, and we might have some relational databases in your architecture. Do we have any folks that run that are using Amazon RDS today? And I talked to customers that use RDS, and they have no idea that Performance Insights exists. Now, Performance Insights came out some years ago. I want to say 2017, and it's able to take a look at your databases and provide insight into how to optimize performance. As the name suggests, Performance Insights. That's another example of input to Amazon Devops Guru's AI ML models that can help look for anomalous behavior. Awesome. So I see another question in the chat. So you have metrics coming in from critical systems, and then you correlate business metrics with operational metrics. That's an interesting one. Okay, so today Devops Guru is ingesting operational metrics, but as far as correlating that to the business side, that's a great thought. I'd love to probably unpack that later if we have time, or maybe as part of that follow-up conversation, which any of you are welcome to set up with me. Is there any way to associate AWS anomalies with some level of risk? So that's another thing you'll see in today's either demo or workshop, depending on if you choose to get hands-on. You'll see there's severity levels. So Devops Guru can map some level of severity to suggest to you if something's like mission critical severity, high severity, or maybe, hey, this may be not the most critical thing, but you should probably take a look at it. Hopefully that answers y'all's questions. Cool. So now going back to this slide, you got these input signals, like your Lambda function. It's generating data like CloudWatch metrics that are vended by default, CloudWatch logs. You have configured manually some dashboards and some notification. For instance, that example previously, your latency reaches a threshold and you want to have an alarm go off and have that show up in your dashboard. Perhaps you're using, CloudWatch dashboards, and you have visualization of 24/7 operations for your applications. But you got to think, this can begin to exceed human scale, and that's you. Like, you thought you were good, you were keeping up with things. You might have been surviving, even though it's been hard. But now you're looking for ways to make this easier. And that's where we're seeing customers adding an AI ML layer, Devops Guru, fully managed AIOps solution to augment their AWS resources and provide insights when it matters to you. This service, it is AI ML powered, but it does not require any AI ML expertise. It's actually super easy to use. The service continuously analyzes and consolidates streams of operational data from various sources. As you see here, the CloudWatch vended metrics, CloudWatch logs. If you have Performance Insights enabled, they can ingest that. And then provide you with a single source of truth to search for and visualize anomalies in your operations. And I see some questions, so I was trying to get to a good stopping point. Let's see. So isn't using AI to help humans scale performance? Exactly. That's pretty much the intent. Can we use artificial intelligence to augment your IT operations to make your life easier? Someone else asked, isn't isn't a dashboard old school now, and you need dashboard for troubleshooting and not for detection. So yeah, and that's one of the cool things about Devops Guru. I'm not suggesting that you might have your CloudWatch dashboard set up and you're looking at those all the time. You might not have that for Devops Guru. Maybe Devops Guru just works behind the scenes for you and you don't even go to the dashboard. That's quite possible. However, you can configure some kind of system, let's say notifications, so that when Devops Guru picks up anomalous behavior, it can bring you that with the contextual information you need to make the next steps to solve it. So you have options there. For folks that want to look at the dashboard, they can, but you also can do automated notifications. And detection and alerting has to be done in real time. Fair, yeah. In an ideal world, as soon as something's going funky, you can know right away. And you'll see Devops Guru today, we're going to intentionally introduce a scenario, and Devops Guru is pretty quick at being able to pick it up. And you have to understand that sometimes there's minor blips, right, where something goes weary and then it comes back down. And so Devops Guru, doesn't want to be notifying you if it's just a real quick hiccup. But rather, if it sees something and then it sees it sustaining, it's like, okay, not only do I see some anomalous behavior that's temporary, but it's actually continuing to go on. And that way it can have high confidence that, hey, I think you should look at this, rather than just blasting notifications all the time. We'd rather have the solution bring you the data and the insights when you need it directly to you. So going back to, I mentioned we recently, or as of July, launched this capability of log analysis. And that helps surface information that is going to highlight the root cause in a more accurate manner and give you more helpful context and troubleshooting. It's funny because I've before we launched that, a lot of the conversations I'd had with folks, they'd say, hey, can Devops Guru ingest my Lambda logs? And I had to, not say anything because we were building it and it's confidential. But now it's out there, and I'm excited that we're able to, going back to that flywheel of just hearing customer feedback and then being able to incorporate that into the product is another part that I love about this job. So Devops Guru uses pre-trained ML models. And so again, no ML expertise required, but I want to emphasize that the ML models are informed by years of experience from Amazon.com and AWS Operational Excellence. And these models can identify anomalous application behavior, such as increased latency, error rates, potential resource constraints, and then surface the critical issues that could cause potential outages or service disruptions. So we're looking at things like, we in the beginning, we mentioned application availability and how more and more folks are actually measuring application availability, especially when it really matters to the business. And that's important. But taking a step further, our CTO, Werner Vogel, is famous for saying this quote, everything fails. Stuff will break. Ultimately, we say serverless, but there's still some server running some stuff underneath the hood. Anything could happen. And, we want to be able to, accommodate and adapt to those kind of circumstances. So in addition to measuring application availability, we're hearing more folks measuring your time to resolve, because it's not if, but when something fails or breaks, how quickly does it take to resolve it? Because you want that 100% availability for people using your application, but sometimes things can happen and, it takes a little bit of time to resolve it. Like my database index issue. I mean, my customer was having a bad time and then they had to call me and then I had to look into it. So that's all going into this, what we call MTTR, or mean time to resolve, and more folks are measuring that as well. So that way we can achieve that high availability and continue to grow. And so Devops Guru is super easy to get started. You just need to provide some guidance about your application boundaries. And in pure easy mode, it is one click to enable. When you click that one click, operational metrics will begin being ingested. Now, you shouldn't expect insights necessarily immediately, because there needs to be some level of baselining that occurs to understand, what are your resources and what kind of operational data are they generating and what is normal behavior. And by establishing that, you could then see some potential insights. For today's workshop, I actually spun up these accounts last night, so that way they're already baseline and you could start having some fun by getting hands-on right away. And so expanding on this, let's say by default, the easy mode, you click enable and it's going to monitor all supported resources in your AWS account for a particular region. Now, what if you don't want every single resource in your AWS account to be monitored? Well, we have a lot of folks, in addition to, going back to this business agility and modernization of IT operations, not only am I a big fan, but we're seeing a lot of customers use infrastructure as code. Highly recommend defining your infrastructure as code. It's treating it the same way you would your applications with version control, etc. But folks that are using infrastructure as code on AWS will use Cloud Formation, and you can define Cloud Formation, which is in essence defining writing code that orchestrates and defines your AWS resources. Let's say that Lambda function, and that's Cloud Formation is in the form of a stack, and you can monitor specific stacks. So let's say later on I'll show you an architecture with a few serverless resources. Those could be all part of the same Cloud Formation stack with infrastructure as code. And so you can choose, let's say I want to monitor this Cloud Formation stack because it's like a really important application to my business. Or maybe I want to monitor all of them, but this one, because that one we're less worried about. We want to give you that flexibility. And then, if you're not using Cloud Formation, I have customers that say, I like Terraform, and that's what we use. And that's great. I'm happy they're using infrastructure as code. So if you're using some other mechanism like Terraform, you can use AWS tags. So similarly to defining specific stacks, you can tag your AWS resources accordingly to allow Devops Guru to monitor those specific resources. Awesome. And so baselining covered. I also want to acknowledge new resources being added. So let's say you did enable it by the entire account, and going back to that manual lift. So let's say you spin up that Lambda function, and then you have to manually configure alarms, and then the traffic pattern changes, and you got to reconfigure it again. If you spin up a Lambda function and you have Devops Guru monitoring your account's region, it's going to automatically begin ingesting that operational metrics. And similarly, you have the option to specify the tag or have that associated with a Cloud Formation stack to achieve the same thing. And all of this is going to help reduce noise, allowing you to focus on high severity issues, ultimately achieving that quicker MTTR. So I thought it might be helpful to, before we get in the hands-on lab, I just want to peel the onion back a little bit more and help you understand how Devops Guru works underneath the hood. And before I do that, I'm going to take a look at the chat and make sure there aren't any questions I haven't answered. While I do that, feel free to add questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. It looks like I'm seeing a handful of various questions or comments in the chat. I see there's both a chat and a Q&A. So, either way works for me. I can look at both, but it looks like most of the questions have been in the main chat, and I've answered those as we've gone. And then I also went over the Q&A. Can we ingest glue jobs related to metrics and logs? I don't know. I'm not aware of Devops Guru use cases with glue. I'm assuming you're referring to AWS Glue. And the answer is I don't know, but I'm more than happy to have a follow-up conversation with you, learn a little bit more about what you'd like to do, and then I can bring it right to the product team and say, hey, we got somebody that would like to see this. So more than happy to figure that out and have a follow-up call. Cool. And now I don't see any other additional questions, so I'll get on to a little bit of this onion peeling. All right. So how does Devops Guru work underneath the hood? And it starts with your AWS resources. So as we've mentioned a bunch, all these resources are generating a lot of data. And remember, all of this is difficult to wrangle. You're creating alarms and you're configuring dashboards and you're moving quickly in your business. Meanwhile, so those resources change. Your traffic pattern changes. Now, rest assured with Devops Guru, when you spin up those new resources and Devops Guru monitors them, it's going to handle this on your behalf. And the data generated by these AWS resources are the input signals for the ML models. So let's take a look at some of this data. No, I've had some of these icons up previously, but I want to kind of break it apart a little bit on how this solution works. So these are some example resources, data stores that's generated by your resources. So your serverless, your Lambda, your DynamoDB, those are going to be generating CloudWatch vended metrics for your relational databases. So let's say you have an Aurora, MySQL, or Postgres database. You could enable performance insights, and then Devops Guru will ingest that performance insights data and be able to identify anomalous database behavior specific to performance and be able to bring that to your attention in the form of an insight. And as I mentioned from my previous experience in the beginning, I made that mistake with that relational database. I failed to implement the index, and I wish I would have had Devops Guru call that out to me. But unfortunately, back in those days, it didn't exist. So I had to, had a bad time, and my customer had to call it out. Of course, CloudTrail, it's good to have the additional log information and all of this. Again, it's feeding into the ML models, and it's going into Devops Guru. And you'll see below Devops Guru, AWS Cloud Formation. Now, if you remember from maybe a slide or two ago, I talked about infrastructure as code and how customers are using infrastructure as code to define their AWS resources. And I spoke to that in the context of Devops Guru can monitor and aggregate by specific CloudFormation stacks. Now, that's one cool thing Devops Guru will do for CloudFormation. But there's another cool thing that Devops Guru will do with CloudFormation, and that's tying back your deployment and infrastructure changes. Now imagine you use CloudFormation to manage your AWS resources, and you or some human makes a change, or maybe there's an automated mechanism that makes a change to modify that CloudFormation. The modification is made. Let's say it's a production system. When that modification is made, it changes your resources behavior. And all of a sudden, coincidentally, your customers are having a bad experience with the application. Now, wouldn't it be convenient if Devops Guru not only can identify the bad time your customers having by aggregating these anomalous application and operational metrics. It'd be really sweet if it could also tie that CloudFormation infrastructure change. And indeed it does. And so you'll get a chance to see that hands-on today. So you'll actually be in the course of the workshop, you'll get vended an AWS account, and you'll be able to make some changes to CloudFormation and then generate some traffic as if, you had some kind of event going on and all these customers are going to your app. And you'll see that when Devops Guru identifies the anomaly, it's able to aggregate that the anomalous metrics, but also say, hey, you happen to change the CloudFormation. And here's a timeline view of you changing the CloudFormation. And then coincidentally, there's some anomalous application behavior. Maybe that's, the cause. So you'll get to see that today. Now, let's get into what you're going to get into today. All right. And again, before I do that, let me just take a moment and make sure people are following. So am I making sense for folks right now? I'd love to hear some yeses if folks are following and I'm explaining things clearly. If there's anything that doesn't make sense or anything that I should speak about again or re-clarify in a different way, I'm happy to take a moment and address any questions right now before we start talking about getting you ready for the workshop. Excellent. I'm getting lots of yeses, absolutelys. Yup. So far, good. Okay, that warms my heart. Thank you. Cool. All right. So, and again, feel free. I'll try to take breaks and say y'all got questions, but feel free to put them in the chat. All right. So this is one of the scenarios for today's workshop, and I'm giving you a sneak peek. So you'll actually be able to replicate this and see how Devops Guru works. So again, I know some of you might be AWS experts, but I want to make sure we're inclusive to folks that might be learning today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you see here. So API, Amazon API Gateway. That is a service that allows you to conveniently configure an API call. Let's say, HTTP request on some port and it has some payload, what have you. You invoke that API by calling making that request. And in turn, Amazon API Gateway is able to invoke the AWS Lambda function on your behalf. Now, AWS Lambda is a way to do what we call serverless compute. So again, you can upload some code and then have it be invoked at your will. And so API Gateway is one mechanism to do that. So you make an API call, it invokes the Lambda function, and that Lambda function, it could be whatever code you want it to be. It could be whatever language you want it to be. Let's say it's Python, a Python programming language, and you got some code in there, and that Python is doing cool stuff, but it needs some help. That Lambda function in Python can't do it all, and you got some data that Lambda function calls, and the Lambda function invokes what we refer to as Amazon DynamoDB. So Amazon DynamoDB, for folks not familiar, is a NoSQL, so a non-relational database. And we can store various data in that database or databases. In this case, it's really simple architecture. Now, I know some folks, you might have way more complicated architectures with a bunch of these and a bunch of other resources, but for the purposes of today's hands-on lab and this kind of demonstration purposes, we made it real simple. So you make an API call, it calls Amazon API Gateway, in turn invokes the Lambda function, which in turn calls the DynamoDB to grab the data and then respond back the API request. And so that's a little bit of the architecture here. Now, one of my favorite aspects of this role is, as I said, making everybody's life better. And so I'm going to check real quick before I was going to do another quick poll. Okay, so someone asked, when did Devops Guru come out? Thank you for answering that. And then the poll. So how many of y'all have been, you got something, maybe you're not woken up in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. Maybe you were, or maybe you were, had an inconvenient circumstance where you're trying to have dinner with the family and you're paged, and your customer or your boss or somebody's like, hey, your app is broken. So go ahead and say yes if you've ever had a circumstance where you've had to be woken up in the middle of the night to fix something, or an inconvenient time, like dinner with the family. I'm going to say yes, because that's happened to me. So yeah, and as I mentioned, the quote from Werner, everything fails. So things will go weary. But let's say it is 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and your API gateway is throwing 5xx errors. Your Lambda function is throwing errors. Your DynamoDB is being throttled. Everything you see here is acting bizarre. It's not behaving as expected. In fact, you have all your alarms going off. You're like, oh my goodness, is it the 5xx errors? It must be a network thing. And you're like, oh, you spend 10 minutes on that, and then you realize, I got to turn back around because it was an API gateway. It wasn't a network issue. Maybe it's the Lambda function. So you start looking at the code and you're thinking, everything looks good with the code. I don't know why it's producing these errors. And then you realize, oh, the Lambda calls the DynamoDB, and there might be something up with DynamoDB. And hypothetically, 30 minutes goes by and you figured it out. But what if you had Devops Guru in place? And this is the workshop that you'll be doing today, where all of those anomalous operational metrics for all of these resources are aggregated into a single pane of glass on your behalf with the various anomalous metrics. It's going to show you a timeline view. You can view a graph of the data points, and then it's going to provide you with a recommendation of, hey, all these things are broken, but it looks like you modified the cloud formation, and then all of a sudden DynamoDB started getting throttled, and maybe something's up with your read capacity in your DynamoDB table. So we'll see what that looks like here shortly. Yeah, I see a lot of yeses to having to be woken up in the middle of the night to fix some IT or software issue, or I see someone saying Devops Guru equals in programmer speak. I love it. Mind piece. So Devops Guru mind piece. That sounds lovely. And then someone says a lot. Cool. So that's a little sneak peek at the workshop. So before, I assume a lot of you here, perhaps you've never heard of this solution. You're not familiar with Devops Guru at all. So before you get hands-on, I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how this works. And this is just an example use case here. And then we're going to give everybody the chance to get hands-on today. So before I show you the console and show you what the insight looks like, I'm going to paint a story. And I know, I heard folks are from all over the world here today. We had North and South America, we had India, Greece, like all these places. And, I'm sure you all represent various industries, various businesses, and rest assured, Devops Guru has something for you. But I think for this one, I'm just going to make up an e-commerce example here. And let's say you are an e-commerce startup and you have a lightning deal where you only have 1,000 units available, and they're going to be priced so competitively that you expect them to sell out pretty quick. And you have a fully serverless application backing this e-commerce solution. And so you have a first in, first out queue via a simple queue service, which is a queuing solution on AWS. And then, so when orders are placed, they go on a queue, and then the Lambda will pick them up off the queue and be able to process those orders. Now, this should work amazingly. However, we're human. We make mistakes. And in this case, a human being made a mistake, and the Lambda timeout exceeds the SQS visibility timeout. And so this means you can end up in a situation where a Lambda is still processing, and you hit the visibility timeout threshold, and another Lambda spins up. So not only is this costing you unnecessary compute, but also further compounding any other thresholds and bottlenecks that might occur in such a flash sale. Fortunately, you have Devops Guru enabled, and it was able to proactively pick this circumstance up before your sale went live. So you weren't able to have this type of friction in your application. So let's take a look at that. And I'm right on the insight here. And again, folks, you may not have ever seen Devops Guru, so I'll quickly show you a quick peek at the dashboard. So this is the dashboard. Again, Devops Guru brings you the insights when you need it, so you don't have to be monitoring this all the time. But you can see the different resources that are being monitored. In this case, they're aggregated by Cloud Formation stacks, that infrastructure as code. We also have a count of the different insights that are going on right now. You can see the different stacks here. Let's say I went into one of the insights, and in this case, it's the SQS visibility example that I just teed up with the e-commerce story. So this is what that kind of insight would look like. Now, it's low severity. It's not, this isn't, absolutely, like destructive. I mean, your application has intelligence implemented so it can identify the duplicate processing. It's not like you're going to send out 2 items to the same customer, but it's, hey, you could do better. So it's picking this up. It's calling out explicitly what the problem is. So the SQS visibility timeout exceeds, the Lambda timeout rather exceeds the recommended SQS visibility timeout. It shows you the particular metric that is in question, and you can conveniently click on that to get more details. You can also see this graph view of the data. And then, of course, in this case, a recommendation. So it's providing you with a convenient link to the documentation. So, hey, you got this problem, and here's a doc you could use to fix it. And then also some recommendation text here, and a convenient link to the resource in question. Now, like I said, you might be using the dashboard, or maybe you're using some notification system. Like you can configure your SNS or EventBridge to be able to get notified when there's an insight. You can package up data points like this. But hypothetically, say you're using the console, you could click on this, make your fixes, and then carry on. Very cool. So now I'm going to try to get back to the PowerPoint. Let's see here. Awesome. So there is Amazon Devops Guru hands-on workshop. And I see someone in the chat has finished the workshop. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. No, I mean, it's totally cool. It looks like maybe the handouts have been accessible, which is cool. But I am going to, for folks that haven't started, which was what I thought the plan, rest assured we're going to get you all hooked up. So in the handouts, there should be a workshop packet, and that's going to provide you with what you need to do the workshop. And so I'll show you what that looks like now. Here is the packet. And so you'll see this is a link that you already saw to register for today. You don't need to worry about that, but just there so we know we're all on the same page. Here is a link to the workshop. Now, if you click that, you'll see this, which is Workshop Studio. It's going to walk you through all the different steps and viewing the insights and that sort of thing. But in order to actually do this workshop, I mean, you could, in theory, certainly you could follow this with your own AWS account. There's just some caveats around, you'd have to stand up the resources yourself and make sure you enable Devops Guru to baseline appropriately. So that's why I'm giving out free accounts. These are sandbox environments. So these are real AWS accounts. These are real AWS resources. This is a realistic DevOps Guru situation. But you got to get one vended to you by putting in this hash code right here. So that's the hash code. And to make that happen, you're going to click on this event engine login URL. So it actually, I would have preferred to open that in another tab. So I'm going to go back and keep this packet up so it's handy for us, and pull up the event engine dashboard. I assume a lot of folks have never seen this before. So this is how, at AWS we can run events for y'all to have these sandbox environments. So what you'll do is you'll take this hash and you'll copy it and paste it into this window. And thank you, Cody, for sharing the hash. I also, I'm looking at the Q&A. I see a question around how someone's asking, does DevOps Guru seems to be after the fact? How do you address, for instance, how soon could you be notified, and how do you address the comparison with shift left? Shift left meaning perhaps doing things earlier on in the software development lifecycle, I assume is what you're referring to. And of course, you could enable DevOps Guru early on in that lifecycle. Like you could enable it on a development environment. I recommend customers or anybody who would like to use DevOps Guru to try it out in production, because it's only ingesting your data, your operational data, to identify when there's an anomaly. So it's not making any changes to your resources. This is bringing you the insights when you need it. So yeah, you could shift left. You could run it in a dev. You could run it in your prod. And then how you ask, how soon can you be notified? Well, that depends. So it depends on the use case, right? We don't want to be noisy. We don't want to bring you insights when they're not helpful. So we want to have that confidence when we bring an insight to you. So it depends, right? So in this case, the workshop today, I expect the insight to come in about, between 7 to 11 minutes, something like that. So about 10 minutes would be an answer, but some examples it's longer. And yeah, I appreciate you clarifying the shift left. Yeah, so certainly enable DevOps Guru in your dev, but most importantly, you're going to get the most value out of your QA. Great. With those questions, I just want to make sure I get super geeked doing these, so I'm ready to go, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Everybody's able to get to your account. So that's why I'm taking a moment here to pause. Is anyone not able to get to this event engine site and enter the hash? Cool. I assume everyone is at this stage or past this stage. Again, you're more than welcome to follow along with me. I'm going to walk through this, but you're also, if you prefer to just go heads down and follow yourself with the steps, you're more than welcome to do that too. Because the insight will take a little bit of time to generate, we'll have kind of a buffer. So maybe folks slip behind, we'll have some time to get caught up. And again, I love having the follow-ups with folks. So anyone attending today, if you want to do this again, or if you have questions for me and you want to make time to discuss, happy to make that time with you. And I'll share my email. I also have the slides to share out, and I have my email at the end of the slides, so you can contact me. It's cool. You put the hash in, you accept, and you'll be vended an account. Mine was already cached, so it just went right in. But for you, you'll follow the workshop steps. So from the workshop, you'll see kind of this summary here. And again, this is all stuff I've been talking about, so you're welcome to read it, but we've already covered it. Because this workshop also can be used for folks not in an event, so we want to be inclusive to that. So you'll follow these event engine steps. You enter the hash. You'll do what's called a OTP, or a one-time password. For me, I was able to, you'll see an option if you're at Amazon, you can just kind of go right in. So that's what I did. But anybody not at Amazon can do this one-time passcode. You'll get that email. Is anybody having issues so far? If you've requested a passcode, have you gotten it? Is anyone still waiting on an OTP? Cool. And then you'll set your team name. And this is where you'll see my email. I also have it in the slides, like I mentioned. Please put your email in here. It's helpful for us, especially I can coordinate if we need to go offline or go to the side and help you with anything. This will be convenient for me to know which account is yours, so we can unblock you. But yeah, as you're going through these steps, like, take your time, folks. Like, if anything doesn't act as expected, most likely either a step was missed or the instructions weren't clear enough for you, and perhaps you missed something. So just take your time. There's no rush here. We have a couple people still waiting for their OTP. No worries. And again, you can we'll hold on a minute for that, but make sure you check any perhaps it might end up in the spam folder or anything like that. So make sure you're checking those as well as you're pending that passcode. So then you'll set the team name there to confirm that. Back to the workshop. And again, all this is outlined in the instructions, right? So there is the AWS console to federate in. So I am going to take this window and move it to the side because it's going to expose some credentials, and this is recorded, at least the screen that I'm showing. So I know Cody's going to put it up online probably today, and those credentials would still be live. So I want to make sure that we're not exposing credentials to the world. So I've moved it over temporarily. I'll move it back. This is the this is what you'll walk through. So I'm walking through. I'm at this step right now, and I know some folks are waiting on their OTP. So no worries there. Just getting my account set up and not exposing the credentials. So please, thank you again for your patience. Awesome. So cool. We're getting people are getting their passcode, and so you'll see this screen once you put in your passcode, and then you click on AWS console, and that's so you can federate in to this sandbox, this temporary AWS account. And then here is why I moved my screen to the other monitor, because these are secrets, and these secrets get you access to that account. And again, these accounts will be available. I started the event right before this, and I configured the event to last 72 hours. So folks, I'd love for you to stick around and go through this together. But if you have some kind of emergency and you need to take a step back, just make sure you grab the packet, because you'll be able to pick up where you left off. If there's enough accounts and you want to do it again, but you want a new sandbox, you could use a different email to get another pass, or if you want to share with your colleagues or friends. But again, I made sure there was enough accounts for everybody today. But if at some point it will there won't be any more. But for folks that do grab one, you'll have it available for the next, at this point, roughly 71 hours from now. And then they'll terminate. Cool. So now I'm going to federate in. Okay, so I see some folks saying they entered the passcode, but it looks like I'm ahead. So again, folks that have entered the passcode, once you enter it, you'll put your email as the team name, and then you'll open up the AWS console. And when you do that, you'll see this. This is the AWS console. Is anybody not here yet? Cool. I'm going to carry on with the workshop. And again, rest assured, there'll be a little break while we're waiting for the insights. So, for folks that may are still waiting for their code or what have you, you'll be able to catch up. Cool. So event engine is done. We're good to go. And again, this is a thing. If you already were logged in, let's say you're an AWS user today and you were logged into an account, you'll see that. Just log out and then re-federate with the console button, and you'll get right back in, or we will get into the temporary account. Cool. And this is just level setting on Cloud9. So Cloud9 is an integrated development environment, or IDE, in the cloud. And you may use a different IDE today, perhaps IntelliJ, Visual Studio Code. Those are all great IDEs too. But for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to use Cloud9. What's cool about Cloud9 is you can actually have like you could use a tablet or a very low powered, like a Chromebook, and only with a web browser you could access a supercomputer in the cloud. And Cloud9 is a virtual, is backed by a EC2 or Elastic Compute Cloud instance. So it's backed by, in essence, a server that is able to be provided with that IDE experience. And so we'll show you how to get there. I'm going to go to the Cloud9 in the console. And once you type in Cloud9 in the console and go to that page, you can open the IDE. Fantastic. And now you'll see this integrated development environment. I have a welcome screen to the top, a terminal at the bottom. I've increased the size, so it's a little smushed right now, but I want to make sure it's legible to everyone viewing. So now that we've opened that IDE, we can continue with the instructions, just kind of helping you understand what is Cloud9 and how to use it. And so now we get into the fun. I know we got a variety of folks here from all different experiences and roles, but for today's workshop, pretend you're the DevOps engineer and you're responsible for this mission critical production system, and this system your customers depend on, right? So for you to stay in business and, grow and maintain business agility, you want to have that operational excellence. So this workshop, it's a very small example here just for the demonstration purposes, but, ultimately, technology is great, but most often we tie it to some business function, some business example. And so this is what we're doing today. Here's an architecture diagram of what you'll be playing with. And so again, this is exactly similar to what I showed in the slides. And again, these resources have been spun up for you. Devops Guru has already been enabled for you. And now you're going to simulate an incident. But before that, an incident has been simulated for you. So, we talked about Devops Guru being ML powered, and you'll see that example in the second scenario. Now, this one is just a straight up best practice. And so you as this DevOps engineer, you've been struggling to keep up with this transformation. You were running traditional compute components like virtual machines, and now everything's serverless, and you made a mistake in configuring your mission critical DynamoDB table. Your customers depend on that for you to be in operation. And what if there's someone accidentally wrote to the table or deleted it, or there's a test script that overwrites. So fortunately, DynamoDB has a mechanism for this. So if you scroll down, we're going to kind of introduce the Devops Guru dashboard. I know I demoed that earlier, but now you can actually get hands-on. And you'll see an ongoing proactive insight. What might that be? And so when you look down, you'll see, now this isn't the most critical, so maybe you're not awoken at 2 a.m. for such a circumstance, but it's considered a medium severity issue. And again, this is a production table. Like this table, if it got overwritten and not backed up, that would be bad. So Devops Guru is letting you know, hey, you should consider DynamoDB, point-in-time recovery. And it provides you with that recommendation. Here's the resource. It's letting you know, why we're recommending that. Here's an example of the docs of how to do it. But the workshop walks you through that process. So there's different ways. I mean, we talk about infrastructure as code. We talk about, programmatically working with AWS resources. So, Cloud Formation is one, infrastructure as code, but another could be an SDK or CLI. You could also do this with that. You could do this with all those mechanisms too. But today we're gonna do it in the console just for simplicity. So to do that, we need to find this table. So what I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna go to the DynamoDB. And I'm gonna find this table and implement point-in-time recovery. Cool. I'm making sure everyone's on the same page here. I appreciate the accolades. Someone said appreciate how everything's going. So I'm glad you're having a good time. Someone also asked about GovCloud. So Devops Guru does not. There is no GovCloud support today. I appreciate you asking because again, that flywheel, right? We listen to our customers and we like to build what they're asking for. So for you. I don't know. But we're happy to make a follow-up, understand more. And we actually have a formal mechanism called a product feature request at Amazon. So I can actually bring this feedback directly to the product team. Hey, somebody's interested in running Devops Guru and GovCloud. So got it noted. All right, so let's take a look at this DynamoDB table. So we're going to go in here. And I think we just got one table for everybody. So we'll click on tables. We'll go into it. I made the text size really big so everyone could see, but I'm gonna have to dial it back because it's too smushed. And let's go to backups. And you'll see point-in-time recovery here, and we can go ahead and enable it. Again, this is just kind of a nice, this is the best practice. Again, there wasn't ML behind this example, right? It's point-in-time recovery was enabled. Let's let you know about it. But the next one, we're going to see some of that ML power come into place. So let's take a look. All right. So now this is a scenario where, and again, Devops Guru, you spin up the resources, it baselines them, it looks for normal operating patterns. And then as your traffic pattern changes, as your resource changes, it evolves over time. So right now our resources are configured with Cloud Formation. And we're going to go in here. And again, this is all detailed in our instructions. We're going to go into our Cloud Formation, and I'm going to modify the read capacity of this DynamoDB table from 5 to 1. Now make sure you save. I'm on a Mac, so I Command S, Control S on Windows. You could also click X after you make the change to really make sure that you're closed, or go to File, Save. The most common mistake I've seen is this doesn't get saved. Now that we've saved it, we can push it. Push it means we've modified the CloudFormation. Now we want to tell our AWS account that, hey, we now want to push those changes, i.e. reduce the read capacity. And so we have a nice command here to do just that. It's actually making those changes for us by pushing that template, that CloudFormation template we just modified. And now we can see there's another command here that actually lets us know what the status is. So because I just pushed it, I expect it to say it's in progress. Now here you could start injecting the traffic, but it probably will take like 30 seconds to actually finalize this change. And once it is, I'm going to start calling this REST API. So again, going back to that architecture. This is what's been spun up for you. The API gateway, when called, invokes the Lambda function, which then in turn calls the DynamoDB table. We just reduced the read capacity of the DynamoDB table, and now we're going to start sending a bunch of traffic to hit this API gateway, which in turn invokes these resources. All right, so now I'm pretty sure our CloudFormation has completed. So it went from in progress to complete. Now I'm going to start sending that traffic. All right, so you can see the time right now. It's 16 after. Wow, we are doing awesome. I love the questions. So I actually were I had even more stuff in my back pocket today, but we got about 15 minutes left. So what we're going to do is get everybody on the same page again. If you're already way ahead and you want to quickly grab some water or use the restroom and come back in a minute or two, you can. I'm not going to see this insight and dive into that until about hopefully like 8 minutes from now, so that there's time to show it. While we're there, does anyone have any questions about the workshop experience or any blockers? I'm looking through the chat now. Cool. Looks like we're doing good. All right, so I'm going to go. I don't expect an insight yet, but I'm going to go to the insights. Or I'm sorry, the dashboard here. And we can see that proactive insights still ongoing. We have I did make that change. I'm pretty sure I made that change to the point in time recovery. So we'll hear it shortly. Maybe not before we end, but at some point that will close loop and we'll see that insight close. But I will expect a reactive insight here in some minutes time. And that's where we dive in to the different sections here. I presume some of you have already seen the insight and started kind of poking around and seeing the timeline and seeing the relevant events. Like for instance, we made that CloudFormation change. We modified the infrastructure as code by pushing that in Cloud9, and we can see that show up in the insights. In addition, the recommendations, right? Like, hey, I know all these things are broken right now, but DynamoDB looks suspicious. So we recommend rolling back that DynamoDB table. And then we also have the graphed anomalies. So you can see a graph view of the different data. I have a question around, are all of these components covered free? If I log into my corporate account, will my corporate monthly bill change? So Devops Guru pricing. Devops Guru is not free, but I don't have folks tell me it's expensive. You can see here, let's say, it's pennies on the dollar. So like, let's say you have a Lambda function Lambda serverless, right? So it's only whenever you invoke that Lambda, it's going to create operational metrics that Devops Guru can ingest. So you're only paying for the resource by the hour when there's actual metrics for Devops Guru to ingest. So it's pay as you go. If you have a Lambda function, as you see, for an hour, that's how much it costs. There is a free tier. So if you turn on Devops Guru today, the first 7,200 resource hours are free for 3 months per month. So you can get started for free for the free tier, if assuming you're under that usage threshold. And then here's some pricing examples as well. And over here in settings, underneath settings, there is a cost estimator. So if you're curious, like you've got this critical system and you want to see how much it might cost to, let's say it's a cloud formation stack you want to monitor, you can estimate that. All right, while we're waiting for the insight, I'll show you how to configure Devops Guru a little bit. Here you have, SNS configuration. So we want to bring the insights to you when you need it. If you're using Ops Center, you can incorporate that for your notification by default. I didn't enable log analysis on your accounts because it's not part of today's workshop, but I'd recommend you enable log analysis. If you have a Lambda and you're monitoring Lambda, you might as well enable log analysis. You're still monitoring that Lambda. There's no additional charge for the log component. So check it out. And of course, Devops Guru for RDS and performance insights. Again, all of these things, I know we can only cover so much in the time we have. So again, I know I shared my email a few times. I don't know if I have in the chat. So I just typed out my email in the chat. Feel free to make note. Feel free to send me an email right now and say, hey, Jonathan, I'd love to follow up and I'll get back to you and we'll find a time. I got a couple questions, or at least another question. Can you point me out to the Cloud9 stack? Oh yeah, sure. The commands we did. So this is all part of the workshop. So essentially from Cloud9, you're going to open that Cloud Formation template, and then you modify the read capacity units and modify the value from 5 to 1 and make sure you save. After which you can start injecting traffic, and sometime after which we hope to see an insight. I think it's been only like 6 minutes though, so I don't know if we'll have it yet. Take a little more time, but I'll show you here. Let's say, we talked about the different analysis coverage. So you can enable Devops Guru for your whole account. You can also enable it for specific cloud formation stacks or tags. So this is what that would look like. So say you turn on Devops Guru and you're like, well, as much as I love it to monitor all my accounts, all my resources in my account, I want to just try out these specific stacks because they're really important. You can choose that as well. You could say, hey, I want all the stacks, or I just want everyone but this one as an example, and then you can save that configuration. And here we go. We got our insight. So it took 7 minutes for this to happen. So I know someone was asking like the timeliness of insight generation. Again, we want to have enough data to have high confidence. Like it's not just a blip. We want to bring this to your attention. This is a problem. So here you can see the insight calling out DynamoDB read throttles. What a coincidence, right? We modified the read capacity. Now the script is still going. So we're still injecting traffic, and you can see sometimes there's getting error. Instead of a response 200, you see error responses 5xx. So if we go back to the insight, we can see it's aggregated some metrics. It's provided us with some recommendations. Let's see. If I zoom it right now, I'm super zoomed in, so it's like messing up the graph, and I'm going to zoom out for demonstration purposes. And you can see the different resources that are anomalous, and you can click on them. Let's say the read throttle, and you can see the graph view here over a timeline. And you can even click right here and dive right into the CloudWatch component of like, let me get a deeper look at this. What are these CloudWatch metrics that are anomalous? You can dive in there. You can also view this This is the aggregated view. There's also the graphed view, so you can see a holistic graph view of, again, you're woken up at 2 a.m. This is your dashboard. Everything's broken, but Devops Guru is aggregating these anomalous metrics as saying, hey, this is all associated with one another. And then when you scroll down, it's going to tell you, you happen to make this cloud formation change because there's this timeline here. You changed it, and then coincidentally, an insight started. And then there's recommendations here to let you know about the DynamoDB table being a problem. So if we, and we're continuing to inject traffic, so we might get more anomalous metrics that get pulled in. So right now, you might see 4 metrics, you might see 3, you might see 7. It really depends on the injection pattern, and because of the ML involved here, there's still some variances that can occur. But you should expect it to pick up the DynamoDB behavior. Cool. So I basically just walked through these different sections here: recommendations, graphed anomalies. I know we just got a few minutes, so again, I got my emails out here. I want to thank Cody, Akanksha, Nick for being around and supporting. I want to thank everybody here that joined. I've done a couple of these DevOps.com's events, and the team there is amazing. Cody, you're amazing. And this has been the most exciting one for me because we had so much interaction, so many comments. So thank you so much. Please, feel free to follow up. These accounts will be available if you want to continue playing around. I want to show you the slides again. Turn on Devops Guru and let us know how it is. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, why not try it? And then, when you have a good experience, come back and let us know. If you feel like your experience didn't meet your expectations, come back and let us know. I'm the developer advocate. I'm super focused on, helping customers be successful and bringing their feedback to the product team. Again, it doesn't modify, Devops Guru doesn't modify your resources. So please try it out on a production system, like an important system. It'll pick up anomalous behavior. And of course, thank you. There's my LinkedIn. So folks, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can shoot me a message on LinkedIn as well. Email, LinkedIn, whatever works. I would be incredibly grateful if you completed this survey. And I'm going to pull up a link to the survey. I don't have a link handy. Does someone mind posting the link to the survey? I just can't copy from my slide right now. There's a QR code I put in the workshop packet as well. Please, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm committed that if you take a minute, it just takes a minute to answer a couple questions. I'm going to use that feedback to continue to grow and improve and make this content more helpful for folks. So please do that. And I think we're coming right up on time. So Cody, are you, do I pass it off to you? Are there any questions in the chat? I got a couple minutes. Happy to answer.
Now, feel free if you still see any questions. I'm just uploading that survey slide is now pinned at the top of the chat. So if you would like to go in and fill out this AWS survey, there is that link in blue at the very top.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody. And it looks like I can show y'all quickly while we have 1 minute here. The survey, it looks like this. You can answer. This was, of course, a virtual event today. You'll be asked about your experience, why, and then I think they'll ask you about me. I think one of the questions is I was available to answer questions. So again, I know, there was a lot of correspondence. I may have missed somebody, so please reach out. I'm more than happy to set up the follow-ups and keep the conversation going. Thank you. 5 out of 5 stars. I appreciate that comment, and people got some good value. And thanks. Someone posted my LinkedIn link in there, so please feel free to connect. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And just for our audience, so I usually end my housekeeping notes with telling you about a survey. So whenever we close out, you will see the devops.com survey pop up on your screen. After you complete that, the exit button will actually take you to the Amazon survey. So if you would please fill out both Jonathan and I would really appreciate that. It shouldn't take but just a couple minutes. But to Jonathan, thank you so much for all the hard work and dedication that you put into these demos every time. It's always a joy having you on with us. And to our audience, this session was recorded. So if you'd like to rewatch, refollow along, or maybe you just want to hear Jonathan talk to you for an hour and a half again, you should be receiving an email with a link to access this recording, or you can find it living on the devops.com website at devops.com/webinars. Now, quickly, I do have 4 gift cards to give out. Our winners are Yashaswini S., Jose G., Yuri C., and Roberto M. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Do keep an eye on your email inbox to claim that gift card. But if you don't see that email, just check your spam folder. Jonathan, thank you. AWS, our sponsor, thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you so much for spending time with us. We really appreciate all the time that everyone spends. And just again, reminder about that survey. Everyone have a great rest of your day.